To thank everyone and close out our session, I would like to invite Mr. Lien Gangte of Vancouver, Canada, who's the president of our NAMTA Canada, and who himself has his family who has been affected by this crisis. So Lien Gangte, please close us out here. Thank you.
Amasapenin, tuni alaya hongki khom hole, itu se yu anangai zo se jibai kain bole. Tuni hi, emite tu se nia imandiu hin, nabon chungwa kipana kahin pungi. That was my mother tongue, Thado. Even though the language of my father is supposed to be Gangte, and that's the traditional shawl that I've got on my shoulders, but Thado is the language of my mother, and that is what I consider my mother tongue. As Florence mentioned, my name is Lien Gangte. A little over a year, my world was turned upside down. My childhood home was looted and burnt. My aging father was almost killed by the bloodthirsty mob that you've all heard very well today. My entire family was dispossessed, and we lost access to the grave of my mother, who lies buried within the premises of our home in Imphal, Manipur. After experiencing over a year of limbo, I feel like I'm descending into Dante's proverbial inferno. Descending not because of my own original sins, but because of the sins of the Indian state. Because of the breakdown of democratic institutions in the country of my birth. Today, over a year after my family lost everything, we still have no idea if or when our issues will ever be resolved. Will we ever get justice? And I'm very grateful today that so many experts, so many people who spoke so eloquently about our issues have gone before me. It makes my job a whole lot easier. So I'm going to try and expedite what I have to say, so please bear with me. I won't take very long of your time. And just briefly reflecting on this past year, last year when Indian Prime Minister Modi was visiting the United States, we were out on the streets outside the White House right here in Washington, D.C., side by side with our allies, decrying the human rights violations of our people, along with so many other marginalized communities from India. We raised our voices to tell the world that all was not well with the great Indian democracy. By then, it was abundantly clear that my people had been subjected to ethnic cleansing, and we were facing an open civil war and impending genocide, like Dr. Sandin so clearly talked about just a minute ago. It was an existential crisis, and we had to fight for our survival. It had become obvious that the Manipur state government, this is at that time, Manipur state government was complicit in the atrocities against the Christian tribals, the Kuki-Zomi-Hmar, my people. We were caught in a conflict where the odds were stacked against us because the state had decided to take side with the majority Hindu Métis, and you guys have heard quite a bit about that already. And it was an asymmetric war. What more can I say? But despite being thrown to the wolves, we had no choice but to call on the government of India to fulfill its constitutional duties. We called on them to provide basic security and justice for our people, citizens of India. We urged the Modi government to listen to the suffering people and address their issues with immediacy, but what did we get? It was silence. In the few occasions that he has spoken since then, his words have poured salt on our gaping wounds. No words of compassion ever escaped his lips that brought our people any measure of comfort. His government, from his home minister to the internationally revered external affairs minister, S. Jaishankar, they've been spewing the same lies that have been used to demonize and dehumanize my people. There again, dehumanizing, demonizing. We were called illegal immigrants in our own ancestral tribal lands. Can you believe it? This is a graphic representation, an artwork by one of our NAMTA members, which we're proudly sharing with you all today. This is our ancestral lands. This is where our ancestors, our forebears are buried. They blamed the Manipur crisis on inflows of refugees from neighboring Myanmar with no credible evidence whatsoever. In fact, like people have spoken before me, the radicalization and the thirst for blood started in Imphal, the capital city of Manipur. This is where Métis groups such as the Arambai Tengol and Métis Lipun, with patronage from the top government leaders, have led the onslaught on Christians. My people. Why are these fascist organizations allowed to operate and not banned? The crisis in Manipur is not due to transnational infiltration, they call it transnational infiltration. It is a state-sponsored pogrom, pure and simple. Biren Singh, the chief minister of Manipur, is a fascist. He orchestrated and patronized the hate campaign against the Kukis, leading up to the violence. That's what he did. He followed the 2002 Gujarat blueprint, like Rapporteur de Varen very clearly mentioned for us during his talk. And he has managed to exceed the devastation of that massacre. Even more recently, he continues to make sectarian comments. He has shown no remorse for his roles, nor taken any responsibility for the chaos he unleashed. He should be banned in every jurisdiction that values human lives. He should be tried for crimes against humanity. And also, again, I at the risk of repeating some of the things that you've already heard during our program today, last July, again, Dr. Varen mentioned this, the viral video of the two tribal women who were paraded naked, sexually molested and gang raped. In fact, there was a third woman who was not in the video. And during our work in the last year, there have been up to 20 women who have been subjected to a similar kind of atrocity that have not been documented in that viral video kind of way. It's not something I can speak much more on that. And in fact, Makepeace Sitho, an award-winning independent journalist, broke a story recently, just end of April, that sheds light on all the horrific details of the viral video incident. It clearly reveals the complicity of the state police, wherein they handed over the victims to the mob instead of protecting them. And it also details the dismal progress made in investigating the crimes and the utter lack of accountability on every front. This is a year later. This is where we still are. Now, the beheading of David Trigg was another ghastly milestone in this conflict, and I'm adding some of the details that the speakers before me have already addressed. He was merely guarding his home in the small village of Langza from marauding mobs. Similarly, more recently, the Métis radicals yet again mutilated the dead bodies of two Kuki village volunteers who were killed in a gunfight, Kamminlal Lupang and Kamdensat Lunkim. Even in death, my people have been robbed of their basic human dignity to be mourned and your last rites to be solemnly performed. Despite the existence of buffer zones, you know, by now you're probably already familiar that the two communities have been physically and geographically separated within the state. So there are these buffer zones that are supposed to be protected by the Central Security Forces, the Indian Security Forces. So the buffer zones between the warring communities in their respective regions of dominance, the aggressions continue to come from the Imphal Valley, that is the Métis. The attacks have been brutal and barbaric, like I mentioned just a minute ago. And most of the times they're even led by some of the state police forces, these so-called commandos and different, state forces. Indian central security forces have also failed to protect and maintain a safe separation of the two communities due to an inherent governance bias. The law known as AFSPA, the Armed Forces Special Powers Act, is in effect in the tribal areas, whereas it was conveniently removed from the Métis areas not long before the present crisis erupted. Those who have followed the atrocities in Kashmir will be no stranger to this draconian law and its severe ramifications that has drawn worldwide condemnation for widespread human rights violations. So even as India boasts of being the world's largest democracy, and if people are not aware, the elections are still ongoing, the parliamentary elections are still ongoing, it has fallen way short of its democratic promises enshrined in its own constitution. Under Prime Minister Modi's leadership and his party, the BJP, India has turned into an electoral autocracy. Voices of a tiny minority community like ours continue to be silenced. In the 2023 monsoon session of Parliament, Puvanlal Vena's microphone was switched off when he spoke about the Manipur issue. He is a member of Parliament from the neighboring state of Mizoram, with whom we share a common kinship. Where should we speak when our representatives get silenced on the floor of the Parliament itself? Where do we speak? As a sign of the growing discontentment and expression of grievances, several groups boycotted the 2024 parliamentary elections in India, including the Young Kuki and the global Kuki-Zomi-Hmar women community. In their letter to the Election Commission of India, the women's group noted 8 specific points, for the reasons for their boycott. And I won't necessarily go through all the points, but I just wanted to highlight one specific point where they cited the discrimination and disenfranchisement of the internally displaced people outside the state of Manipur. So please keep those points in mind, when you think about the Indian democracy. Far from being the mother of democracy, like Prime Minister Modi likes to call it, India's elections have been tainted with systemic failures, booth capturing, and other rampant irregularities. For having the courage and audacity to speak about the plight of our people and their human rights violations, we have been attacked, like Florence mentioned in her opening remarks, viciously on the mainstream Indian media and social media platforms. Our Twitter accounts or X accounts are withheld or banned in India. In fact, in my personal case, an MLA, a member of the Legislative Assembly in Manipur, R.K. Imosing, called for an investigation against me. And these, when you add all these instances together, these are clear cases of transnational repression that I think most people in this room are probably more familiar with that than I myself am. The US authorities must take very seriously. This is to protect our First Amendment rights, the freedom of speech and expression? It's quite clear and simple. Our people in India are scared. On the one hand, they are hounded by the Métis radicals, threatening their very existence. And on the other hand, they face intimidation from the very authorities they seek protection from. These days, it seems that a protest permit is granted contingent upon the organizers agreeing to not criticize the government. Is this what Indian democracy has become? Who will speak truth to power? In this desperate scenario, like Nyang also just mentioned in her talk, we ask the United States Congress to move its mighty weight and speak up for the voiceless. And as mentioned in our open petition, we ask, 6 specific things to monitor the situation, document atrocities, discrimination, and I won't necessarily go, into all the details of what you were asking, but I think speakers before me have very clearly identified what the need is. And I don't know what else I can add at this stage. I just want to conclude. I would like to thank all the speakers before me and everyone who took time to come here and listen to what we had to say. I'm so appreciative of your presence here, and we need to stand up for human rights and religious freedom. We need each and every one of you to stand with us. Please don't let our little community become the forgotten casualties in a rapidly deteriorating situation. Thank you so much.
If there are any questions, we'll take them, but if not, please make sure to help yourself to the food that we have provided. Thank you.